Hello again. This is the part one of lecture two for Psych 611. Here I've broken down the lecture into three parts. As I mentioned in the syllabus material before, part one is a cursory review, part two is a little bit more in-depth, and then part three is the optional material. So right now I'm going to do a screen share, and I'm going to show you the material that I wish to go over. And you'll see here, this is the material that I showed you. That is the website. And what you'll see, so this is the course website. And what you'll see is I'm slowly building up this section here where there are links for the syllabus and all the videos. There's a whole playlist here that you can get to, and slowly I'll be creating these links. So, but in the meantime, what I do want to do is I want to draw your attention to the lecture material, which is these lecture materials are the notes right here. And then occasionally I'm going to throw in some links. So let me first talk about part one. And part one is this cursory review. It's supposed to last 40 minutes during the lecture, but these videos will last a very short period of time. I just want to give you some overview about the material that I'm going to talk about, and to kind of pique your interest and perhaps even give you some additional reading. So first, I want to talk about the important statistical concepts. Now, the reason for that is if you go up to Module 1, you'll see here that we talk about notation, levels of measurement, distributions, where I want you to be able to define terms. I also want you to be able to define terms for measures of central tendency and dispersion. And so therefore, part of this lecture is to introduce, in many ways, reintroduce you to these topics. So first, I expect people to understand the difference between variables and constants. Variables are things that could be observations, could be codes, whatever, but they cannot have the same value. If they have the same value, then they're considered to be constants. So what differentiates a variable from a constant is a constant has zero variance. It has no deviation from the mean, whereas variables do have deviations from the mean. Next is measures of central tendency. There are a variety of them, and I would like it for you to be able to calculate different measures of central tendency, mean, median, and mode. And even within mean, there's arithmetic means, harmonic means, geometric means, and trim means. And the more you have an understanding about each one of these and how to arrive at them, you'll get a better understanding about what these measures of central tendency offer, where their strengths and limitations lie. Measures of dispersion, as I mentioned before, is the level of uncertainty that we have about our measure of central tendency. And a measure of dispersion is, as I mentioned before in previous video, the most important concept that you can learn and really appreciate in all of statistics is variance. So if you learn nothing else, and if you study nothing else, study the concept of variance. And there are different ways in which you can calculate variability. These are different measures of dispersion, but usually what we look at is this is the variance of a population, but more importantly, what we would calculate for samples is this variance. And so this variance is the sums of the squares divided by degrees of freedom. And that's the way I will discuss it in class. And then precision of estimation is really just a matter of to what extent can we provide some level of confidence about our measure of central tendency. And as I mentioned earlier, we like variance insofar as variance is central to statistics, but variance is difficult for humans to understand. So what we do is we change variance into standard deviation, but then we have another transformation that's really useful where we can take that measure of dispersion and turn it into confidence intervals. Hence, we can get an estimate for precision of our mean. So the standard error of the mean, along with confidence intervals around a mean, this provides us with an idea about to what extent do we believe that the dispersion around our measure of central tendency is something that's defensible. So oftentimes we have something that we want it to be different from. And because we want it to be different, let's say we have a drug and we have two groups and we wish the drug to produce outcomes where the two groups differ. So the difference between the two groups is not zero. So that's why we would use confidence intervals, and we'd say the interval should not include zero. And we'll talk more about that in class. Then next is we have measures of association and measures of difference. And the course is essentially broken down into 4 units where we have measures of central tendency, we have measures of dispersion, which then precision of estimation moves us into hypothesis testing, but really what we go into is we go into measures of association and measures of difference. Measures of association are for continuous variables, they're correlations. For categorical variables, they could be chi-squares or a variety of things, phi coefficients. And for measures of difference, they could be t-tests or ANOVA. Okay, now, why am I giving you this overview? Because the overview provides us with a framework in which we can move forward and you have a better appreciation for where we are going to go. So I want to bring your attention now to a historical event, and at least a historical a point where you can actually gain some traction for that organization. And it starts with William S. Gossett. And Gossett was a brewer, and what he was interested in, he was a brewer for the Guinness Brewing Company, and he was interested in developing a statistical test to determine whether different batches produced different tastes. And so what he did was he solved a quite vexing problem for small samples which he could take, because he didn't want to take a census of all possible pints out of any brew. He wanted to take small samples and be able to compare them. So William S. Gossett is the student in student t-test, and he was the developer of that, who later R.A. Fisher developed the ANOVA. So there's an interesting historical set of circumstances, and I put a link on the course website where you can go down and you can click on this link, and this is a little history. It's very brief, but well worth reading, especially if you like Guinness. Okay, and as I promised that this would be a cursory overview, and we're going to go down to part 2 for the next video. So stay tuned for that.